I woke up gasping for air, the sound of his voice still echoing in my ears. "Come to the airport. I'm arriving on the morning flight." It wasn't just a dream. It felt like a memory, like Mark had been right there beside me, his words pressing against the walls of my bedroom, as real as the air I breathed. My hands trembled as I pulled the sheets tighter around my sweat-damp skin. For a moment, I couldn't move. The clock on the nightstand blinked 4:38 a.m., and rain pattered softly against the window. The same soft drizzle that always seemed to arrive in late October, right around the anniversary. 6 years and 4 days since his plane went down off the coast of Cape Cod. They never found his body, just twisted wreckage and scattered memories floating in the sea. I'd held on to that absence for years, like some cruel joke from the ocean. The drive to Logan was a blur of gray asphalt, wiper blades, and silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want music or voices or distractions. I wanted the storm outside to match the storm inside, and it did. Every gust of wind felt like a warning, every flash of brake lights ahead of me like a pulse of doubt. Still, I kept driving. As the city skyline began to rise ahead, I realized I hadn't even brushed my teeth. I was going to walk into an international airport looking like a ghost, which felt fitting, I suppose. I wasn't there to see the living. I was chasing the dead. I found the arrival screen. My heart jumped when I saw it. Flight 348 from Istanbul. On time. I had 35 minutes. I sat down on a bench across from the customs exit. Every few seconds, my eyes darted up, and then I saw him. At first, it was just the way he walked. Calm, slightly forward-leaning, like someone always bracing for turbulence. Then the shape of his jaw, his profile, the line of his brow. Mark. He looked older, a bit thinner, a scar sliced through his hairline on the left side. Something new. But it was him. My husband, the man I had buried in my heart 6 years ago. And he wasn't alone. A woman walked beside him. Blonde, tall, beautiful in a polished magazine cover way. She laughed at something he said, tipping her head back carefree. Her hand held a bouquet of roses. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back. They were walking like a couple, like two people deeply, unapologetically in love. I couldn't breathe. Then Mark turned his head and our eyes met. In a second, the smile vanished from his face. Shock. Then something sharper. Anger. He stepped forward fast. "What the hell are you doing here?" he barked. It was the first thing he'd said to me in 6 years. Not, "I missed you," not, "You're alive," not even my name, just rage. We ended up at a cafe tucked into the corner of the arrivals terminal. "I suppose I owe you some kind of explanation," he said, sounding not sorry but annoyed. "I didn't die," he said plainly. "I survived. I was thrown clear during the crash. I woke up on the shore hours later. By the time my memory returned, I had already been registered under a different name, Max Jones." "And you just went with it?" I asked, my voice broken and foreign in my own ears. He shrugged. It seemed easier, cleaner. No questions, no messy explanations. "No wife, no life back home?" "I thought it was a sign," he snapped, "a second chance." My soul bled from every word he said. He had told his new wife, Helen, that I had died in a car accident. When she asked why, he just waved it off. I needed space, closure for everyone. This wasn't the man I married. Mark didn't confess his lies, then ask for a divorce, claiming rights to half of everything we had built. I didn't remember driving home. Somehow, I ended up parked in front of my little gray cottage by the harbor, my hands clenched on the steering wheel. I just sat there, hollowed out by the weight of it all. Later that night, I took out the box. It had been in the attic for years, sealed, taped, labeled with his name. Inside were our wedding photos, flight school certificates, postcards from Italy and Cape Cod, all the echoes of a life that was supposed to be ours. I held up our wedding photo and stared at the woman I used to be. That woman had buried a husband. She didn't deserve this ghost crawling out of the past, demanding his share. My phone buzzed. A new message. I've made an appointment with a lawyer. 10 a.m. Monday. You'll need to sign papers. Mark. No, please. No, I'm sorry. Just cold logistics. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my old legal folder. My main account was fine, but the second account, the savings I'd quietly built over the years from the sale of my father's old beach property, was empty. $182,400. Vanished. I blinked. No recent activity, no recorded transfers. Somehow he'd accessed it. Suddenly, the dots started connecting faster than I could breathe. He hadn't just come back for a divorce, he'd already taken what he wanted. This wasn't about closure. This was about theft. I called my lawyer, Eleanor Miller, the only person I trusted in such situations. She said Mark had already been there, claiming he faked his death for a government witness protection program. I explained he was lying and told her about the stolen money. We decided to treat this as what it was: fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. Eleanor warned that we would also have to fight for public opinion. I was ready. I had the truth. 2 days later, I saw her. Helen. It happened at the small grocery store on Main Street. I approached her. She didn't pretend not to know me. I'm Emma Davis, I said. She gave a tight nod. I asked how long they had been together. We met 4 years ago in D.C. He introduced himself as Max Jones. He never told you he was married. No, he said his wife had died in a fire. And that's when I realized something else. She wasn't the villain. She was just another casualty, a different kind of widow. She handed me a small envelope Ilya had left in his drawer and walked away. I waited until I was home to open the envelope. The paper inside was old, creased, yellowed at the edges. It was a photocopy of a death certificate. His own. Mark Davis, deceased, May 19th, 2020. My hands shook. He had forged his own death. Mark had somehow manipulated the system, faked a tragedy, and vanished like a ghost to a new name and a new life. 5 long days of sleepless nights and self-doubt. Then late one afternoon, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. He stepped out slowly, alone. No Helen, no bodyguards, just Mark, or Max, whatever name he was using now. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. I laughed. It was bitter and cold and hollow. You faked your own death, Mark. You let me mourn you. You let me bury an empty box. He claimed he had no choice, that it was a threat tied to his past missions, and the only way to protect me was to disappear. I didn't believe him. He had fabricated a new life for himself and found a new love. He didn't deny it, didn't apologize. I handed him a folder. Inside were copies of the certificate, Eleanor's findings, and a notarized letter stating my intent. I'm filing a petition to have your death certificate voided, to restore my legal identity, to expose everything you buried under your lies. I don't care if you run again. I just want the truth documented. And if I refuse? I stood. Then I'll go public. You'll be a ghost hunted by everyone you tried to avoid. He closed his eyes, then sighed quietly and pulled a pen from his coat. I'll sign it, but, Emma, I never stopped loving you. I didn't flinch. You didn't love me. You loved the version of me that didn't get in my way. As he stood and walked back to the SUV, I felt no satisfaction, no victory, just closure. And sometimes that's the bravest kind of ending. The voided death certificate arrived in the mail on a Thursday afternoon. I held it in my hands like it was some ancient artifact pulled from a shipwreck. It smelled of ink and bureaucracy, but to me it was the most sacred piece of paper I had received in years. Not because of what it undid, but because of what it allowed me to do next. I changed my name back, legally, officially, proudly. Emma Davis. I reclaimed every syllable like a breath I'd been holding for too long. The bank account that had been frozen under a false widow status was finally released. Not much was left, but it was enough. Enough to move, to rebuild, to choose. I didn't stay in Gloucester. There were too many ghosts in that town, some mine, some borrowed. Instead, I packed 2 duffel bags, sold the remaining furniture, and drove south along the coast. I didn't have a map or a plan, just a direction. It was somewhere near Narragansett Bay that I pulled over on a foggy morning and watched the waves break over the rocks. There was a small cottage for rent just off the beach. White shutters, uneven floorboards, and a porch that creaked like an old song. Once I had been the woman who believed in stories, in perfect love and happy endings. Now I was the woman who knew the truth was always more complex, more painful, but that only the truth could bring peace. I walked toward the door. I didn't know what was waiting for me inside, but for the first time in 5 years, I was ready to find out.